This old grandpa is waving his hand over a boy's face. Then a frog appears in his hand. After that, he twists his hand, then a rose comes. When he gently shakes his hand, the rose turns into a flute. Finally, the grandpa disappears along with the tree. Since then, Eisenheim becomes interested in magic. He spends most of his time practicing. People begin to think he has some special power, or at least he's a bit different. He's even more attractive when he's concentrating. And then he meets Sophie, the Duchess of Teschen. He has made a bracelet to give to Sophie. Unfortunately, Sophie is brought back to the castle, and they are forbidden to see each other. Eisenheim is heartbroken, deciding to leave this place. From that day, nobody sees him anymore. 15 years later, he returns to Vienna to perform. Thousands of audiences come to watch his performance. Eisenheim is cutting orange and taking the seeds out. Then he puts them into a pot. Magic now comes. The seeds are sprouted, then branches, and leaves also grow. Within a second, fruit starts to grow as well. At the end of the performance, 2 butterflies are flying onto the stage with an audience's hand towel. This is truly an exhilarating performance. Everybody stands up and applauds him. 1 hour later, his magic show appears in every newspaper. The royal guests also come here to watch Eisenheim's performance. I need a volunteer from the audience. Someone is not afraid of death. But nobody dares to say anything. Now the prince stands up. My wife wants to give it a try. This prince is such a bastard. This woman is told to stand in front of the mirror. She is told to wave to herself and turn in a circle. But when she's bowing herself, the person in the mirror doesn't follow her. She finds it weird and turns around to check. Suddenly another person appears with a sword, slashing at the person in the mirror. When Eisenheim sees it, he waves his hand toward the mirror. It looks like he's chanting a spell. The person on the ground starts to emit white smoke. Eisenheim collects them and says go away. The woman is speechless. She slowly walks down the stage in fright. This performance is very successful. The prince starts being arrogant, saying that, I think I understand all except for the ghost. Then he invites Eisenheim to conduct a private performance at the palace. He will expose Eisenheim's trick on that day. When he's leaving, Eisenheim kindly says that, I'll prepare something special, perhaps I'll make you disappear. The woman finds his words familiar. Because she is Sophie. They were separated by force when they were younger. The next day, they meet each other again. Will they be able to take what they have lost? Eisenheim has come to the palace for a performance. He doesn't need to touch the paper, but the paper gradually displays the painting. The prince is not happy, starting to show off his intelligence. You hide something like sprayer in your sleeves? But then he couldn't find anything. He proposes a challenge. Why don't you astonish us without all of your magic tricks? Eisenheim agrees. He asks to borrow the prince's sword, which is filled with gemstones. We all know about the sword called Excalibur. The Excalibur blade was fixed in stone. Many knights tried to pull the sword from the stone, but none of them could. Whoever pulls it out is the symbol of power. An old man comes to try. But no matter how much he tries, the sword just moves a little bit. He can't pull it out. Then the prince's cousin goes on the stage. He even uses both hands, but the sword is still standing. Now it's the prince's turn. Somebody is saying that, come on. If you can't pull it out, you'll never be the emperor for your father. The prince is a bit nervous, staring at Eisenheim. He's about to use all of his strength. But this time, this sword is taken out easily. The prince is confused, feeling that he's being humiliated in front of his royal family. After the performance is finished, the prince immediately orders to assassinate Eisenheim. That night, Sophie comes to look for Eisenheim. She can't stop blaming him for his extreme actions today. While Eisenheim doesn't say anything. He starts kissing her, and then they make love. The next day, Eisenheim has made up his mind to escape from the noble's control. He gives all of his cash to Sophie. But this is seen by an inspector. This inspector tells everything to the prince. He thought that it would be important news, but the prince also knew about this. At night, Sophie is asked to come over. Actually, their marriage is just for the benefit. The prince is planning to overthrow his elderly father. He says he won't talk about this anymore. But she needs to leave with him tomorrow. Sophie doesn't care what he's saying. She says goodbye and then leaves. The subordinate hears loud voices, but he doesn't dare to do anything. He just sees that the prince is chasing outside. Then he even hears the sound of the sword. Sophie is unconscious on the horse. Until the next morning, the horse goes back to the palace. Without Sophie. When her body is discovered, she has been in the water for over 10 hours. According to the doctor, there is a wound on her throat from a sword and she bled to death. After checking her body, he has found a small gemstone. This throws Eisenheim into depression. In the end, he decides to avenge. First of all, he buys a theater and begins a new series of magic shows. Fire is placed in front of the stage. He gathers strength in the palm of his hand. Then the table next to him starts displaying a half-body spirit. This man is answering the audience's questions as well. Following this, Eisenheim waves his hand again, making the man disappear. This performance has astonished everybody. They believe that Eisenheim has supernatural powers and desire to know more about them through him. There are more and more audience in his next magic shows. This time, he is focusing on the summoning of a dead little boy. The magic show once again attracts the prince's attention. The prince sends out an inspector to investigate. When the little boy is coming out from the back gate, a man reaches out to touch. But he can't touch the boy, which freaks the inspector out, so he takes a step back. Is this boy a ghost? He immediately goes back to tell the prince, but he doesn't believe it. He just always assumes that those are fraudulent. They secretly attend one of Eisenheim's show. Eisenheim is trying all of his strength to summon the spirit of Sophie. Who murdered you? Sophie says that someone here. These things are becoming more and more outrageous. The inspector tells him not to do these things again, or he'll be imprisoned. Unexpectedly, he replies, I promise you that you'll enjoy the next show. The next day, the inspector sends many police officers out to not let him escape. Eisenheim summons Sophie again in spite of the warnings. The audience commence feeling nervous. The inspector finds it out of his control, so he storms the stage with his officers. Is Eisenheim dead? The inspector now has to investigate. At Eisenheim's house, he has found a drawing for a necklace. He seems to remember something, so he goes back to the palace stables. The necklace is dropped here. He also finds a gemstone in the grass. This gemstone matches the prince's sword. The inspector comes to tell the prince to surrender. He has informed the emperor and the general staff of the prince's conspiracy. He then picks up the gun and shoots himself in the head. The next day, the inspector leaves the palace in a very relaxed mood. A boy suddenly approaches him and hands him a package. This is Eisenheim's notebook about the trick. He feels that Eisenheim is near here. Then he sees a suspicious man walking towards the train. When the train departs, he finally understands everything. They purposefully made the inspector know about their relationship. Then Sophie put anesthetic into the prince's glass of wine. After the prince chased her to the stables, the anesthetic will work to make him unconscious. Sophie took this advantage to arrange the scene. She pretended to be injured and left the palace. Finally, they bribed the doctor to create a fake death scene. They also took advantage of the inspector's aggressive personality. Now the inspector laughs delightedly at the brilliance of their plan. Eisenheim boards a train and escapes to the mountain where the girl he loves is waiting. Use love to lead the audience to excellent magic shows. And the truth is also revealed at the end of the movie. A romantic mystery film. Have you seen its mystery yet?